Right, I'm so share Wake Up Africa Video Royal Television. So we bet my coswado message number 0200421723 0200421723 na enche ye be kan messages kakra mo de abano e de amamo na ebiem so meka wo se abapamo eye dwumaku a no so ebo echidom na yitumi e de dwumade ebram kosere bia abapamo se na de obeya ne so betra fie na wafa mobile phone no na wofa ukọ eye Play Store ho na se App Store ho no mo a ekwa akwhwehwe eye mo app no abapamo app no uhuna na wa download na aka phone so afidi obeya ne se ne ade bia opese woto bia no no ana be faso e de ato se yentade na apese woto eyempaboa na apese woto eniema nipa de siesie no ma no ho ye fe bia no perfume so everything ne nyina no benya bi wa abapamo eno etwamu a eye ada electrical gadget ahodo bia no so no ekwa abapamo ho a benya bia to sa so na electronic gadget ahodo ye mobile phones ne smart watches na aba nyina no obenya bi abapamo ato ebiem so eye household items ahodo bia ade bia nipa da sanu hia e wo setram bia no bomode na so de wani che abapamo a obenya ebi e wo ho ato nti do be ya ne se obefa eye mo number say good tv no so no na wa fresh so nya and download the app ni bia bomode so betumi download the app ni bi ne ne manyina atumi akoye so ede amamo ofa yento aso
obekan why the China lease Hong Kong to Britain.
Okay.
Obekan we the ababi see her.
Leasing Hong Kong. Or say the Treaty of Nanking did not, however, resolve the opium trade dispute, and the conflict escalated again into the Second Opium War. The settlement of that conflict was the first Convention of Peking, ratified on October 8, 1860, when Britain acquired the southern part of the Colonial Peninsula and Stonecutters Island, that is Ngong Chinchang. The British grew increasingly worried about the security of their free port in British Hong Kong during the second half of the 19th century. It was an isolated island surrounded by areas still under Chinese control. On June 9, 1898, the British signed a deal with the Chinese to lease Hong Kong, Colonial, and the new territories. The remainder of the Colonial Peninsula, north of Boundary Street, more territory beyond Kowloon into the Shan River, and over 200 outlying islands. Hong Kong's British governors pressed for outright ownership, but the Chinese, while weakened by the First Sino-Japanese War, negotiated a more reasonable cession to finally end the war. That legally binding lease was to last 99 years. In fear at your concron. You have 100 prequel.
I beside I don't know standard.
Yes.
I don't know about British colonies. Yeah, Lissima 99 years. Yeah, that you say. Yeah, baby. I will if you say, Oko supermarket now got there say 5.99. And the 3 prequel, the 6 prequel was a 5.99. And the buy and to quite the questions, no, China for Lucy. And the Nadia Beban say, any at the Hong Kong, Bemam. Yeah, the mamu we are 99 years, no. Nature say, from the time of Moka, never so 1997. And you know, won't prepare 1997 in Dua, Mobile. The next video, no, I ever know. Or can be say, Naka British 1% come on the ma earlier.
Yes.
Na China for the henny.
No, mampre.
Pompne. Yeah, so I state your.
No,
Yeah, mamu nyaida. Mo de mo mfa. If you say now omusu nim say. Oh, omu nim say. Hong Kong, Britain for no be develop. Ama aba ye business hub. And this be do omu nsema, anu no be use no omu so anya external money. Omu so dia fe omu crew. Enti ekwan bia so no. Say the man now develop. And in that Britain for also person fa the other so mo call no nya more. And you know so debate say yem fa na say nyan. And I say yem fa democracy now. And we can afford this mo person di democracy say yem fa. Your borders no more did democracy. And your minimum and your man trouble about cause within side territories, you know. A bear mama. And the long and short to me say, Ampa. And you say a buy. Now video no nebema a more vivid history.
Okay.
Maybe I may paraphrase it. I'm here who the echo. And the uncle a third video.
Why did the British give Hong Kong to China? That is China
uncensored.
Uncensored. Oh, okay. Right. And no any third video yeah ba abehwana busha answer no kwakwa sa video no memfa mo messages mi no bia aba entwam na fe yakwa third video no emra was Hebrew men have spoken, earth is shaking, people are confused, as Bible said, wise men listen to advice but foolish men hate it. Great teachers carry on from Thomas Newton, Yankee, Kwame Krum, anono ediwe ebaye. If I'm not sure, I say I am very blessful to follow this program always. Thanks for educating us. My concern is last 2 weeks topic. Why is it that Roman Catholic priest, Pope, and the rest do not marry? Collins from Zongo. Okay, I say we are boss open, but the minister work of our body. If that is the case, then when will God, the Creator Himself, judgment will take place? Okay, and I say Bisa. Oh Bisa, which was saying, I'm really enjoying the program. Papa, keep opening our eyes so Africans can awake from its slumber. I have learned a lot today. Thank you so much for your insightful program. Christianity has misled us from Augustine Obuasi. But we try to nyako hear third video na aba. Was say, good afternoon, Hebrew teachers. Another great day with a new positive teachings of Yah Kingdom message, culminating into the transformation and the regathering of the lost children of Israel being black people. This is a deep revelation message, and may Yah guide you to continue to come out with more revelation messages. This is the time for a change in the mindset of black man, of positivities and possibilities. Safo inside Sahi Kusukrum. I wish for your third video. Why did the Britain give Hong Kong to China? China uncensored.
Well, once upon a time, everyone wanted stuff that was made in China, because no one made better quality stuff than China. But China didn't really want any of the cheap junk made by other countries, like, say, Great Britain, which sucked for them. But then, in the early 1800s, the British figured out something everyone wanted. Drugs, specifically opium. The Chinese tried to just say no to drugs and threw a bunch of opium into the water. And as an American, I guess there's something about British goods that just make people want to throw them in the water. Anyway, the Chinese destruction of opium led to the First Opium War, and the British won Hong Kong Island. The British had so much fun. A few years later, they decided to have a second Opium War, and the British won Kowloon. Then China lost a war with Japan, and the British thought, what the heck, why not just grab some more land, as the British liked to do in those days. And that's how the British Empire ended up with the new territories. This time, though, they technically only leased the land for 99 years as a concession to the Chinese. 99-year leases were a standard way of owning property in Great Britain, so they probably assumed a 99-year lease really meant sort of forever. Kind of like the way teenagers borrow money from their parents. Do parents really expect to get the money back? Little could the British have imagined that a future government of China would insist that the 99-year lease should expire with no option for renewal on July 1st, 1997. So for more than 100 years, the British built up Hong Kong's industry and commerce. It eventually became a major financial hub in Asia. The quality of living was completely different from mainland China, which had been seized by communist rule. But by that point in history, owning colonies overseas was getting less and less fashionable. According to a cache of colonial records the British government declassified in 2014, the Brits were mulling granting Hong Kong self-governance in the 1950s. But the Chinese Communist Party did not like the idea of a democracy on their border. So they sent a threatening message to Britain that they would not hesitate to take positive action to have Hong Kong, Kowloon, and the new territories liberated from the oppression of self-governance. In other words, the CCP threatened to invade Hong Kong if the British made it democratic. But at the same time, the Communist Party wanted the Brits to stay and rule, so China could use Hong Kong to trade and contact people of other countries and obtain materials. So the best thing the British could do for Hong Kong at the time was continue to colonize them. Awkward. And the Communist Party was perfectly happy to let the British build Hong Kong into the financial hub of Asia, because ultimately, the Communist Party had a plan to take Hong Kong in 1997. But wait a minute, you say. It was only the new territories that were on lease. Britain would still get to keep Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, right? Well, here's the thing. If the British had insisted on keeping Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, the Communist Party could just make life extremely difficult for the people there, like by shutting off their water, because almost all the water comes from China and the new territories. So rather than let its people die of thirst or terrible BO, the British were forced to deal with the reality that when the lease to the new territories was up, they'd have to give up Hong Kong and Kowloon as well. Plus, they didn't want to fight the People's Liberation Army. But the British told the people of Hong Kong, don't worry, it'll totally be fine. The Chinese Communist Party will respect your freedoms. It's like when you tell your kids you're going to Disneyland, but really you're taking them to the dentist. The dentist from the Little Shop of Horrors. But wait, didn't many of the colonies that belonged to the former British Empire get to become independent? Like Fiji and the Bahamas and like 50 others. Why was the only option for Hong Kong to revert to Chinese rule? Because of a very, very sneaky move by the CCP. In 1971, the United Nations had the great idea to recognize the People's Republic of China, and not the Republic of China in Taiwan, as the one true China. And one of the first things that the new Chinese ambassador to the UN did was to send this letter to the United Nations Special Committee on the Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and People. Okay, I know this sounds boring, but trust me, it's about to get really interesting. The letter said that Hong Kong and Macau should not be considered colonies at all. Nope, they're just part of Chinese territory occupied by the British and Portuguese. Nothing to see here. And the Select Committee decided that was okay with them. Buried in paragraph 183 on page 64 of Volume 1 of their 5-volume, 1,000-plus page annual report, the committee removed Hong Kong and Macau from the list of non-self-governing territories. In a separate document, the committee referenced China's letter as the direct reason for their decision. Why was this a big deal? Well, later in 1972, the UN adopted Resolution 2908, which was a resolution largely about supporting decolonization. Part of the resolution was approving the Special Committee's report. You know, the one that was over 1,000 pages long that I'm sure everyone definitely read. Just like you thoroughly review the terms and conditions on your smartphone every time they change and carefully consider whether to agree to them. No way do you just hit accept and move on with your day. That would be irresponsible. The resolution passed 99-5. Basically, the Chinese ambassador to the UN buried an obscure line in a long document so that when the UN members voted to support the independence of colonized people worldwide, Hong Kong and Macau were no longer on the list. This technicality completely changed the destiny of Hong Kong, because they no longer had the legal right under the United Nations to be independent. So with this legal manipulation, plus threats to cut off the water supply, the British had no choice but to hand over Hong Kong to China. In 1982, then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher visited Beijing and began negotiations over the future of Hong Kong. At first, the British hoped that even if they had to legally give Hong Kong back to China, they could still be involved in administering the territory, if the Chinese wanted. To which the Chinese side said, nope. They made it clear that the Communist Party's sovereignty over Hong Kong was the most important thing. After 2 years of negotiation, the Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed in 1984, establishing the handover of Hong Kong and the one country, two systems model. You know who weren't part of the negotiations? The people of Hong Kong. And many were justifiably upset about it. To Britain's credit, though, before they were forced to leave Hong Kong, they tried to protect many of Hong Kong's freedoms. The last governor of Hong Kong, Chris Patten, even expanded the legislative elections to make them more democratic. The Chinese Communist Party condemned Patten for that and called him a liar, snake, prostitute, and tango dancer. Presumably not all at once. And so in 1997, the British left Hong Kong. And the rest is history.
Luciana, just a summoner and a tentain in the teaching. I don't know. Some I abrush in a video, a shemukana, a choir, British, a bob modia, the opium, crochet, China, corn, muntok, some, I may do by Bucram Pono, a man who wouldn't be a bench, I seem to be content so in a home, and your bonnet of them, and of our idea. Back a canning album now, dear Jack, when we are going to that 3 stage, you know. I'm saying, I'm
and then no send a kind, China for near Domudi kind. Now, when you the first problem, Kumu, if you say, a coba say, young Traho, Emma, young Cosati be a movie me family, and Tino, and Conformity, you win a peja or mumu, a bay appear. It room rebino, let us a China and go at teacher and say, Koso. And the warlords, armies, Chinese army, then your back.
Okay.
Ubia on allegiance, any baby are free. And this a cobasan, Emma appear a buy. Now the main characters are Mumbai, a moon, or Mube.
Okay.
Mao Zedong.
Okay.
Chairman Mao. Any Chen Kai shek. Na medimanu besi ha enya bebrebe ne
okay
enkotra se yembo bo that's ya
ofa poku dan kwa yeso e beda wase e won pempenso a wo so de ba bedru e fan komo a ene da ba ma so ye de say end time event leading to the final confrontation to usher in the kingdom of Yah according to the prophetic plan of Yah Israel. Na otwedi ampo yakopon ono ankasa eye na nisode hu na na se na di yie mu no said why na hihye ya to no eniema ahodo a etwa se eba ansa na ede yawura sa na wie ebre ni mu no eno nkomo ani gusu a ye ne mu asa be call of Israel ho no meka o se Israel consort eno madaroma books ahodo edidi adwuma ni nyina no ibiaba ono no ebebo ho dawuro ede akyeye yin na de ba ko a me koso aka o se unsanya nka bia be pebie no quantum spectacle no eno ana space wanwaso a aba esa yeni yaro wa nyina de amaye nemo mpacho anifra ete ana fe de friends glaucoma no enka ho nemo se bia ko ba so wani so hyehyewo wani no watim se kuro bia ba so wani ne huna de yi wo akira twintwan wo ani ma twintwan wo ko ayaresa bia space de aba wa hye ebe ese de tie nanso aya enko yi space ne to wani ne se de tie de tie wo no hye but more than so sabe to makasa quantum spectacle na bi eno na hyewa enna ma duro so nko wo mini ntin esiesi woni ni so ekro ya woni amane hunu bia woni nam so bia no yini nyina firi wo hye kakran bi was na space mo ka ma to ma hye bi be na otwini me pacho enya na wo de koso ne hye na wo hya firi bo so me ko no bo si woni na fi esiesi ne ba so sa because edua ede evie petepepe akia no yemfa na wo twa na dako emfa ntren no inti share space nga krakra ebe siesi woni ni so ama woni ni so beda ho wan ebe hu ade se de tie na ewi space na nse yo ida so beko so ahye ana be yi ato na ba bi hia o man backpacks o man backpacks abe bo pa enu nti ana space na ehu be hia se buhia nsa bia no ebe tumi akabie praise you consult I was 0244 686557 0244 686557 and now so say 0207 782 482 they consult bejo so now what you spectacle na bi aton the to so biem e quantum beauty spray sa spray dem chini dia na makoma to yam because odi gu ni padua no ho a e ma nya hode energy the to so ni no insisiwa nsan basa stretch marks ahodo e na keka ho nyina no ebi ma ni padua no eso tambia ni padua no e smooth intimida metaka mfo de masile queens ne pa say we sile quena ase bribi anya bi e de to e your bag mu because e spray bi aba ne deal manfo so nsem e de aba mu ye pa mmarima yɛhyɛ mpaboa a yɛnan mu bɔn no yɛbɛhia sɛ nsa bɛka ɛyɛ